Last guest writes the first question. They have no knowledge who the next guest is going to be. Basically, they're going to be a veteran or a former first responder. So with that, it's on you.
What have you learned about yourself that has entirely changed the trajectory in how much you approach life? Dan Pena, 4 or 5 years ago. If you don't know him, look him up. One quote.
Is he the one that's very polite in the way he speaks?
I wouldn't say he's polite. Inspirational, sure, but not so much polite.
He speaks truthfully.
Yes, unadulterated truth. But I think that's what I needed at a certain time in my life when I was going through this ambiguous transition that we all know from the military. He said, show me your friends and I'll show you your future. That alone changed my life. And I can't tell you. My friend circle changed. My communication circle changed. I didn't ostracize or excise the people that weren't worthy of meeting certain criteria, but I want people with the same mindset, the same objectives, the same goals, the same values, right? And I have since met probably 7 or 8 goals in a matter of 4 years that generally take about 10 to 15 because of Dan Pena. Secondary shout out to Jordan Peterson. I can't say enough about him. Finding your monster, so to speak. But yeah, Dan Pena, show me your friends and I'll show you your future.
When you did that collective evaluation of your friend circle, both personal and professional, was it extremely eye-opening to you in the sense that did you have to completely erase the board, or was it I just need to move a few pieces?
I only kept one person, and that was my best friend from the military. Obviously, those relationships are a little bit stronger than you would in the civilian sector. Everyone else I had met through professional circles across my journey, across jobs, clients and all that, and built rapport and relationships with them. But, having, dinners with them and you can have the conversation, whether it's companies or charities or stocks or personal growth or, finding time, find that life family balance. Those are really the things that kind of resonate and reverberate with where I was and where I needed to go. Absolutely. That's where the professional growth had. The more professional growth I had, the easier it was on my family. Better life, more time, more money. Never had to worry about, it's softball season. My daughter needs $1,000 for softball. All set. Don't worry about it. Taking those alleviations out of life has made my life so much better.
Throwing it back to a personal, as far as now that you've made the changes, you reorganized your circle. How important is it for you and how much effort do you put in now being the best you can be back to that circle?
So it's one of those, there's a certain reciprocity or value expression, if you want, of reciprocity of investment between me and others in my circle. I possess a lot of skills that they don't, a lot of knowledge that they don't, and vice versa. And it takes a lot of humility to, open yourself up, be humble, and be willing to learn, and most of all, listen. A lot of people listen to react, but you have to be willing to listen to understand. And to be able to do that, you got to put your humility aside, your ego aside. It's as simple as that.
Because I do believe that we all need to constantly evaluate and reevaluate the circle of people that we have around us. And as you progress, considering progression as a positive, as you progress and get better in your life position, whatever you want to refer to it as, there are going to be times that you are going to need to remove people from your circle and basically level up to keep leveling yourself up. That's the easy. I say it's the easy part because we are great as people of pointing out everybody around us and their faults. Well, that person's not good for me, so I'm just going to get rid of them. But once you have that quality circle around you, then it becomes, all right, what am I doing to help them? What am I doing to ensure that I'm not just simply taking from what they have?
Well, I suppose an exemplar to that as an example would be them reaching out to you. If people aren't reaching out to you, you're not bringing value to their lives, right? You're just taking. Sometimes to alleviate that, you can just call and check on someone. It doesn't have to necessarily be bringing tangible ROIs to the table. It can just be something as nice as, how's it going? How is your mother doing? I heard she was in the hospital. You can be genuine and reach out without having to literally offer them knowledge or an opportunity. It can just be on a human level too.
I don't think we do a lot of that well, in the sense of boiling it down, I would say, to just being people and just checking on each other at the basic human level.
I think a lot of people have issues with time. I mean, most people are going through a struggle, most of it being related financially or time or money, right? And it's really hard to focus your energy outward when you have so much stress in your own little circle, right? You're still focused on your spouse and your children. It's even hard to focus on your parents or your friends at that level. But again, that's the same thing. And you have to be able to identify where accountability needs to take place. And if your friends circle, your communicative circle is full of people who don't do that, that's not healthy for yourself as well, because they're always going to leech on you as well. And there's nothing you can do for someone who isn't going to have the want to take personal accountability, right? And there's generally three ways that people do that. The one who have the wisdom and intelligence and humility to see it coming. The ones who have some intelligence and wisdom, but they don't really do anything until they find pain, right? And then there's the most common, the people who have to learn through pain, hitting rock bottom. I have nowhere to go but change, but take accountability. Until that happens, you will not be out of that rock bottom. So understanding what your circle is like that, or what part of your circles are or not like that, is very important.
I think, unfortunately, a lot of the people in our communities, the veteran and first responder world, we tend to be that third because we are so type A. We are so ego driven that we think we can fix and control everything. Mm-hmm. And we'll ride that ship until it sinks, until we literally have to go, okay, fine, throw me that lifeline.
Yeah, well, so to any active duty service member watching this, I would say, answer this question to yourself. Who are your 5 best friends? Almost invariably, you're going to notice that they're all active duty service members. And as you transfer out, you'll have some veteran buddies, but that circle is going to change. And being adaptable to understanding what those relationships look like, we don't have the trauma bonding. We don't have the stories and the history and the time spent. You know, we spend more time with our buddies in the military than we do our own wives and children. Yeah, those connections are strong, long lasting too. You're not going to find that in the civilian sector because nothing can compare, right? You have to go through pain, suffering, triumphs, losses, failures together, right? That collective mentality that's been indoctrinated since basic training, really.
You've started it, so let's paint the full picture of you. Obviously, we're going to get to your military time. Where's hometown? Where'd you grow up?
I grew up in Norwich, Connecticut. East Coast. Yep. UConn fan.
Now, no idea what Norwich is like. Is it a big city, small city?
They call it the Rose of New England.
Okay.
Very beautiful. It's got a lot of ups and downs. It's close to the beach. It's got a lot of great food, great people, mountains, lakes, cities, casinos, hiking. Pretty much has a little bit of everything you can want. The seasons, you know, it's whatever you want is there, right? Not a lot of industry, but everything else is there. That's why a lot of people go there to retire. You know, they get the seasons, they get the things to do, but it's not a great place to earn, so to speak.
Mom and Dad, were they generational there, or what took them there?
Generational, yeah. Yeah, we've been there for 4 or 5 generations now.
How many brothers, sisters, or are you an only child?
I'm middle child of an older brother, younger sister.
Were you, I'll say, a good kid?
Yeah, I was a very good kid. Very influential, I would say. But I suppose any adolescent kind of going through life would be pretty impressionable. Finding my own self really didn't happen until I was in my probably mid to late 20s. I was a product of the circle I hung out with, as you can imagine.
What did Mom and Dad do for work?
My father was a carpenter. My mother was a bus driver. Very simple, blue-collar folk. And we had great upbringing. You know, there was months, no heat, you know, eating grilled cheese. So we, you know, every night. So I do understand the hardships, and that has been a driving motivational factor in my life, and probably one of the very, unlike many others, it's been probably the main one to make sure I take care of my wife and children.
Got it. What drove you? What took up your time when you were a kid?
As post-18?
Pre-18, while you're elementary school, high school.
basketball and academics. That's it. Wasn't very applied in academics. Didn't see the value. Wasn't ever going to get a scholarship. So just basketball. That was my first one and true love. Before 18, AAU, college, 6 hours a day, basketball. That was me. That was me, right? There's other activities too, but that was generally what I was an athlete. Football. I played a little bit of college basketball, but yeah, track. Your general jock.
Were your parents driving college for you and your siblings?
Absolutely not. Most of my family had not gone to college. Tried little associates here and there, but nothing to completion, right? So that wasn't really my future. I tried it after high school. Didn't really have the guidance I needed to apply myself and, conviction and dedication to complete, what I was venturing upon. I hadn't even seen what that looked like. I had great parents up until 18. Fantastic. After 18, I was pretty much on my own. Had no idea how to become a man, right?
Was it overt in the sense that your parents were like, hey, you're 18, you're an adult, go figure out your life? Or was it you just kind of, you know what, I want to start forging my own path?
A bit of both, right? So it's figure it out. They gave me a place to live until I did figure it out, which is great. But there was no direction, coaching, counseling, mentoring, guidance of sorts that, we'd expect. Especially, being ex-military, we'd expect that, right? Very structured, very methodical, calculating, planned, prescriptive, what do you want to call it? But yeah, I didn't have any of that. So it took me a while. I'd worked in Alaska, made good money doing concrete, international projects with Canada, but it was short-term gains. There was nothing there that was like, yeah, this is the path. This is the way. Enough to make and do what I wanted to do. Didn't think about retirement, didn't think about career, didn't think about what if I got hurt? What would I do then? There wasn't any contingencies or risk analysis. There was absolutely nothing mature about my adult thinking. It took a time.
Was your older brother offering any type of positive or negative guidance that you could follow or not follow?
He had a very antiquated kind of approach to work. Jump in something, that's what you're going to do until the day you die.
You'll get your retirement and the gold watch and be happy.
Pretty much. Maybe not the same company, but, with the same field. There was no, adaptability in his, professional endeavors. It was strictly just went from surveying to utility / engineering for water and gas. It was just very, very vanilla, very, very niche, very swim lane. I had no idea what I wanted to do. I know the lifestyle I saw. We're going to get into something interesting with the military in a minute, but they always ask you, what do you want to be when you grow up? What do you want to be? And one thing I realized is that's the worst question you can ask a child. The only right question is, what kind of lifestyle do you want to live? Because I'd be a swim instructor on the beach right now, living in a tent. My wife and kids might hate me, but I'd be happy, right? So it's very rare you have the luxury to do what you want and earn the way you need. And that usually comes later in life when you become qualified, compatible, conscientious, capable, right? That becomes a luxury, something you earn. It's very, 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 very rare. You get both sides of that coin.
You mentioned Alaska. So walk me through graduation from high school. Where do you end up going to college? Is it immediate that, man, college just isn't working for me? Or were you kind of in a positive mode and then went, man, this just doesn't work?
So college was, I went to psychology, right? Just what I wanted to do, had no idea what that looked like, pass an associate's degree, right? It just sounded like a good dream. So it's the nonsense they sell you in high school. What do you want to be when you grow up? Nobody cares. When you become a grown man, then you got to figure it out. But yeah, I did it for my associates, played college ball at University of Connecticut, Avery Point. D3, nothing major. But I hated it. I traveled. I was unfocused. I was undisciplined. I was unmotivated. I didn't see the light at the end of the tunnel. It was a checkbox to be checked. And I had no motivation where I couldn't see the payoff at the end. Now, not every degree pays off either, right? So
Well, unfortunately, psychology is a hard one to use if only going to stop at an undergrad degree.
Yeah, you got to go all the way. You have to go all the way. Engineering, you only need a bachelor's, and you can, at least now make almost $100,000 out the gate, between base and bonus. So, yeah, I had no one to tell me all that, much like the military.
With the ability to look back on it now as an adult, was there anybody in your life? And I don't mean to imply that your parents were negative influences. I'm equating a lot of what I experienced growing up. My father didn't go to college. For him, it was when you graduate high school, go get a job, and almost trying to think about what you want to do with your life. Stop screwing around. Stop daydreaming. Go get a job. And so, not negative or positive, but anybody else in your life that was kind of a mentor or a guide or anything at all that you maybe could have even used them as hey, that's a good beacon. I'm going to go that direction.
No, simply no. Like, absolutely 100% not. That just kind of, paramount to the show me your friends and I'll show you your future, right? I had to get out of Connecticut. It doesn't matter what I had to do. I had to get out. And that ended up actually being the military for me.
So did Alaska come after the military?
No, Alaska came first.
Okay.
I did a year in Alaska. Excuse me. I did a year in Alaska. Concrete construction, bridge project for bridge in the Yukon, Canada. Great money.
How does that opportunity
My
hit
dad
your
was
radar?
out there.
Oh, okay.
My dad and I co-ran a company.
Got it.
I was smart with numbers. He was smart with, selling, so to speak. It was a joint effort. And we did great. $1,000 a day back in the early 2000s wasn't bad. However, 6 months later, you're spending it all across 6 months of no work. So, it wasn't a great long-term plan, right? But, just working like that, even working just kind of jobs to get by, Olive Garden, whatever.
So even with that industry, there was a down season in Alaska? I'm assuming because
absolutely.
of the weather and...
Absolutely. Even in Connecticut it was. You don't want to pour concrete in the freezing cold, right? It's even harder to pour in the extreme heat, right? You have less time, less of any kind of retardant in the concrete to prevent it from setting. But yeah, it's also seasonal. Work always slows in the construction industry in winter, especially if you're in the northern states. Snow makes it more difficult. Transmission distribution, anything you do in construction, it's always going to slow down with winter. Whether it's groundwater, whether it's snow, whether it's just cold and people move slower. You can't get as much production. But yeah, there was no long-term kind of payoff where I could see myself, this is it.
So basically you did a year up there. It sounds like the entire time knowing this is not going to last for me.
Oh, I was miserable. I mean, it was nice having a good chunk of change in my pocket, at the end of like August, September, but it wasn't, all that work paid off. Now I'm going to invest it or do something cool with it. No, it went out the window in like 4 months. And that was a lot of money.
I think about those TV shows where they show the guys doing the commercial fishing up in, Alaska. And they talk about how you're out there for 3 or 4 months, you make a garbage load of money, and then it's literally a struggle to make it to the next season with the money you come off the boat with.
Yeah. And there's different pay scales too. Your first year out there, you're not really making too much. I had a buddy, John, who did that for several years before he ended up quitting. But yeah, that was not something I wanted to do forever. So
how does the military come to your radar?
So I entered the military quite late in life, which is going to yield some interesting perspectives after this. I was 30 years old, jumped from job to job. I was making money here and there, getting by, but there was nothing really there. So I said, okay, well, military stability, right? Learn skills, get an education, seems to be a lot of upside. Contracts were 3.5 years long. I went to entertain the idea, late 2014.
Never considered it anytime as a young boy coming out of high school?
So here's the thing, and I believe it's still kind of a stereotype that exists today, except outside, obviously the military families. Military, I thought when I was young, was for the bottom 10% of each class. And I still think that that's an idea that resonates with kids in high school. They don't look at it as an opportunity. I was so wrong about it. I'm having my daughter who's about to graduate next year join the military. She'll be 23 years old out of the military with a master's degree. Veteran benefits, everything. Master's degree completed, making 6 figures. It's literally that easy. You shake your stick at a job at that point. That's how wrong I was. If you know how to leverage your benefits right. And not many people do. But yeah, so I joined the military. I had no idea at the time other than, stability. I had a wife and a kid at the time. I have a wife and 4 kids now. So that grows. It's a luxury you get with a little more income. But yeah, I got out 3 years later, 3.5 years later. I probably had a couple of weeks to transition. I was babysitting soldiers who were getting chaptered out. I didn't really have any time to take care of myself, understand, even go into medical, to get tested for sleep apnea, this and that. They just keep, go away. You don't have that. It was a real rough experience for me and probably much worse for a lot of others.
Let me take you backwards though, real quick.
Mm-hmm.
When you decided to go in the military, did you examine all the branches? Did you?
I tried to go to Marines first. I was too old. Mm-hmm. So Air Force doesn't sound appealing. Didn't want to end up in North Dakota. So Army was my choice.
And going in, did you have an idea what you wanted to do in the military?
I was a real physical guy, obviously. So I wanted to do combat, anything combat, infantry, 19 Delta Cav Scout, which I ended up choosing. There's only 3 things available when I was in there. And another one was a combat engineer. So I chose Cavalry Scout. It just sounded different, sounded interesting. Sounds like, everyone goes infantry, right? And I take the path, less traveled. So I chose Cavalry Scout.
When'd you go in?
2015, January 5th.
And where'd you go to basic training?
OSA in Fort Benning, Georgia. Call it something else now, I think.
How was that experience for you?
A lot different than everyone else's. And mostly because I was older. Your prefrontal cortex doesn't even develop until you're 23, I think it is. They have these 18-year-old kids in there and they get their first phone call and they're crying their eyes out on the weekend. I was like, I just said goodbye 3 days ago. I don't need a phone call. But that's not, it sounds funny, but it just shows you that the development of your mind's a little bit different ages. I've been away from my family. I've been in Alaska. I've been in no cell phone, internet, TV service, those kind of remote jobs. So for me, it wasn't really that bad. The yelling, come from an Irish household. Yelling is not something new to me. Getting in your face. It was just stressful. Yeah, don't get me wrong. But it wasn't as bad as a lot of the other basic training soldiers had to go through.
How did you take to, and I'm not trying to imply you were undisciplined but at 30 years old and already a lot of life experience, the game probably gets real annoying real quick, I would imagine.
Yeah, you end up becoming a leader real quick is what happened. I finished top of class when I was in basic training, honor grad, if you will. I could see through a lot of the stuff. I mean, I was also an avid reader, so I understood trauma theory, cognitive overload theory, cognitive resource theory, trauma bonding, neuroplasticity, neurons that fire together, wire together, right? Stuff like that. So there's a method to the madness that was going on, right? Even from shaving your head is to make you all one, right? Break down your collective, ideology into, gets rid of your individuality into a collective one. Through inculcation of culture, which is the leadership values and all that. It's a whole methodical psychosocial deconstruction and reconstruction that happens. Even me, yeah, it happens to me too. Doesn't matter. You go through it, you build the bonds, you have the reactions, right? Attention or whatever. But also being older allows you to, I believe, be more of a critical thinker. That neuroplastic reactions optimization I was talking about, I'll give an example. I call it the Roger reflex. How many people just say Roger blindly without even thinking if that makes sense? Most of them, right? Prime example, right? Cell phone use. You have to answer your commands, calls, and texts. Why? But doesn't the Army give you what you need? Don't they issue you something if they want you to have something? They didn't issue a cell phone. So why are you being threatened to do something with your cell phone that it's not there to have access to? That's wild to me. So I'd play ball, but I wouldn't let them abuse it. I'd turn my cell phone off if I was busy. If I was out and I was on a...
This sounds like, though, after you're out of...
This is just after basic training. It's my first experience at a duty station. What's your phone number? I gave it to him. I had no idea at the time, but I was like, that's a weird question, like... And then they began to do recalls at 0400 hours for privates at the on post who didn't have cigarettes picked up. And I was like, oh my God. I said, okay, I need to find a way to mitigate that. But my point is that the way that the thought processes worked much different than, Roger, I'm on my way.
When you first went in, was there any thought of doing a career?
Absolutely not. So that might sound like, an answer that came a little too quick, but there is the law of diminishing returns, right? It was a means to an end. I'm extremely proud of my service, extremely proud of what I did. All the connections I made, everything I've been through, the good, the bad, the suck, everything, right? Super proud. It defined a lot of who I am now. But that said, staying in for a second term would not have changed my life in the least at all. I became disciplined, right? I became motivated, right? There wasn't enough money to say, okay, stay another year. Even 20 grand wouldn't have changed anything for signing bonus. So that said, the ROI on that didn't make any sense. Give another 3.5 years of my life, 7 total, and be in the exact same position I was at the end of 3.5 years. Now, there are people who would love to stay in, right, for 20 years. But I had a pretty good mind for money at that point. Understanding benefits versus base pay, 50% of base pay, retirement. It didn't make sense. I thought about it. I really did. But I also didn't like...
You've got a lot of coffee options out there. You've got a lot of veteran and first responder owned coffee companies as well. Trident Coffee is one of these companies, but they're different. Trident fuels your body and mind with a premium cold brew that's infused with powerful ingredients for performance, focus, and wellness. Made with organic MCT oil, lion's mane, and reishi mushrooms, this isn't just coffee. It's fuel for your brain, ensuring smooth, steady energy with no jitters and no crashes. Plus, the cocoa powder adds antioxidants, and the electrolytes keep you hydrated and balanced. Yes, they are cold brew experts, and their beans are brewed for cold brew optimization. But what does that mean for those of you who also love hot coffee like me? Their coffee tastes amazing, not bitter. So enjoy it hot or iced, mixed into your protein shake, or take it on the go. However you drink it, Trident Coffee is coffee upgraded. Get yours now at tridentcoffee.com and use the promo code TDP15 for 15% off your order. That's TDP15 for 15% off your order. Stay sharp, stay fueled, stay ready.
It was more oligopolistic than meritocratic in the sense that it was built more on relationships, right? It was built on rank, which is symbolic interactionism. From having your wings to having your combat patch to, having your rank, right? To the color of the beret you are. Everything is symbolic, right? And that culture was great while you're in, but I really wanted to spread my wings and earn my own way and also get compensated for that. I wanted to give I'm gone for 10 months on a deployment, and I can't afford to send my kids to Disneyland while I'm gone. Hey, Dad's not here. Sorry. You know what, babe? Take the kids to Disneyland. That should be an easy thing. As hard as your work. You're going 10 months, another $250 a month for being in a combat zone. Didn't make sense. So yeah, 3.5 years, I knew it was going to be done.
Going back though to, for each person in the military, those rank, those insignias, the color of the beret, the combat badge. For a lot of people though, and it goes back to your comment earlier that how many people just say Roger and don't think about what's being asked or told of them to do. And where I'm going with this is Not that it's a bad thing, not that it's a good thing, but for some people, that's their motivation in life. That's their drive, is to get that next color beret, that next, rank, because you could almost say maybe it's because they didn't have a clear direction of, for what I'm giving, what am I going to get in return?
So there's that whole breakdown with the military culture, right? It happens in basic, starts in basic. They strip you of your phones. It's an isolation method, right? And we can talk about panopticism, which is another issue, but they're taught to believe that, right? Sacrifice first, mission first, battles first, everything, right? You are always last on the totem pole for prioritization and what is needed for you. It could be your future, it could be your education, it could be compensation. It doesn't matter. You're last. So I would ask anyone, that beret, that patch, why? Why? There is no good answer you're going to hear, at least in my opinion, outside of, I'm proud of what I did. And that's not a bad answer. But to spend 6 years going through buds or something like that, why? You ask someone after the fact, ex post facto, I don't really believe you'll actually find an interesting answer outside of, my buddies had it, I wanted one. I wanted to be, it's like that death and rebirth cycle that, it's you're graduating something by earning that symbol.
For me, I look at it in a lot of different lenses at one time. And it's largely driven by doing this podcast. My first, and I would say foremost opinion for the young men and women in these careers, you're always doing a reevaluation. And do you want to do this for the next 20 years? So I really like hearing your version of the story of, man, I went, but I knew it was not going to be a career for me. I don't feel that there's anything wrong with that. But for the same token, if there is somebody who is motivated by that next rank, that next color beret, whatever it is,
mm-hmm.
and they look in the mirror and they ask themselves, why am I doing this? If the answer is because my buddy Bob did it or my friend Julie did it, I don't think that's motivation for you to do it. If you're looking in the mirror and going, this feeds a piece of me, mm-hmm. and it's what I want, then that's the right answer for you.
Mm-hmm.
And nobody can make that answer right or wrong as long as it's right for you.
Yeah, that's into the land of subjectivity, but 100% true. Yeah. So some people are extrinsically motivated and some people are intrinsically motivated. The binary in there lies between, do you want something tangible, aka compensation, or do you want that feel good on the inside, which is intrinsic? So it depends. Everyone's motivated a little bit differently. Some people are okay living in that lower middle class, mediocrity, happy. Everyone's fed. I'll work till the day I die. But I'm motivated by a pat on the back and seeing something I created or remembering something that I did. And there's nothing wrong with that. But it's a question that I don't think a lot of people honestly have with themselves. Like I was doing ranger training at one point. I'm like, what in the hell am I doing? I don't want this. I was signed up for it. And I was like, all right, let's go through the training. Let's, sure. My buddy's doing it. I'm like,
and you also, there does come a point where you have to be honest with yourself. And like you said earlier, when you're asking your kid, not what do you want to do? Mm-hmm. What kind of lifestyle do you want to live? So if you're going through ranger training, but your long-term goal is, I want to make 7 figures a year and I want to have a yacht and I want to have 2 vacation homes.
Mm-hmm.
The military's not going to give that to you. So it's really difficult to have both. If you have a desire to serve and want to do that, then you have to understand that there is going to be a limitation on the financial growth your life is going to be able to experience.
Absolutely. And it's a double-edged sword here because you're about to open up a can that's going to be highly unpopular here in a minute.
I like that though.
I'm actually probably going to get a lot for this one, but how much, you're 100% right on the compensation. You can do it in the military if you have financial literacy at a higher level. I'll give you an example. If you had to guess, how much would you estimate that an E5 with a spouse and 2 children makes? No one's going to guess it exact, but
yeah,
just
I'm
rough it in.
I'm gonna put it in the 90 to 95,000 range.
About 120.
Okay.
If you take all the benefits, the BAS, the healthcare, the no copays, the BAH, let's just use the BAH. It's like $2,300 a month. It's $4,200 a month for an E5 base. Now let's just add in one of those benefits, which are tax-free, by the way. $2,300 a month. What is that? I don't know, $26,000 a year, something like that. What is a civilian equivalency to make that 26,000? 34 divide by 0.7, right? Between, Medicare and state and federal, right? So you got to make 34,000 to get that same housing mortgage net. So you add that 36 on top of the, or 34 on top of the 42, right? Now you're at 76 base. Go into your BAS, you go into your healthcare, and not only that, you're only getting taxed at $42,000, not 120. So there's that savings. You got the commissary, it's 15 to 25% savings. The list goes on. Dental, right? The average person spends about $9,000 to $10,000 a year between premiums and copays and out-of-pocket costs for healthcare for their family. That's $14,000 on top of it right there. You keep adding it all together, it's almost $120,000, which is crazy because most people get out of the military and they're happy with a $70,000 a year job and have no idea they're taking almost a $50,000 a year hit. And they're wondering why they're struggling. But, I had this knowledge when I was in too. So it was a little easier for me to transition now without having to know where I am to where you want to go. It's your vantage point, right? You have to know where you're at before you know where you want to go. I also knew that I want more control in my life because the only issue I had with the military is the amount of hours I worked. So even if you make $120,000, it's like $20 an hour. If you don't have overtime, right? So that was the issue. I didn't have the time to spend with my family.
Well, that was what I was waiting for, and that's the caveat. You talked about all of the incentives and benefits you have. That's assuming that your family wants to live on base or that you want to live on base wherever you're assigned. That's also factoring in that you don't have the security of knowing that when you put your kids in a certain school, they're going to be able to go through that school their entire time. They're potentially going to have to move. You're going to deploy, forget reassignment duty station. You've got to deploy. So yes, you can gain a lot. And if you do your career, there's a lot of benefits to it, but there's also a lot of ancillary, and I'll put it in the negative column that comes to your family. So that's where I was going with it. And at the end of the day, you're never going to get uber wealthy unless you are so dialed in on every little penny and invest perfectly. Yes, you could probably do something. But I've had a guest on here who was doing real estate on the side during his last couple of years in the Marine Corps. And he got to a point, it's like, I can make so much more money by getting out of the Marine Corps instead of staying in and doing 30 or whatever it was. So there comes that point where you have to have, you and your spouse, your family, you and yourself have to have that conversation. Am I making enough money to be happy? But if I want to make more money, is the military going to give me that route?
So that's also very rare that you find something like that because most active duty service members are very risk averse. They've never taken a risk in their life. I'm not talking combat. I'm talking about, hey, let's move here. We choose to move here. I'm not talking about the military moves. I'm talking about you move here.
Right.
Let's go do this job. Hey, let's go buy a house out of state. I just bought my house here in California, and my first day was 2 weeks prior to buying the house at my new job. So that's a risk.
Pull that microphone just a little bit closer to you if you're going to sit back that way.
That's a risk. And they don't know about that yet. And that's something they have to take when they transition to the civilian sector. So he already had experience in real estate, right? So that is definitely going to slingshot him into a higher rate of success once he transitions.
Well, there's a lot of factors into it. There's a lot of factors like yourself, where he came to the Marine Corps with a little bit of hustle already in him from growing up.
Mm-hmm.
Two, during his time in the Marine Corps, he still took side jobs. He was always that you use the word risk averse, I use the word hustler, whatever you want to refer to it. Some people are always driven, like what's more, what's next.
Mm-hmm.
You could almost call it the negative for many of us who come into these careers, even those coming into law enforcement or the first responder community. They tend to come in at 19, 20, 21 years old, like I said, brain's not fully developed. For the most part, there is a little bit of truth in what you said earlier, where they tend to be the careers for young men and women who didn't perceive having options in their lives.
Mm-hmm.
There are the few that, man, at 13 years old, I knew I wanted a machine gun and I wanted to, be in combat. And the military gave me that opportunity. Or I knew at 13 years old, I wanted to fly airplanes, or I wanted to put out fires, whatever it is.
Mm-hmm.
There are those. I'm not saying everybody comes to this because, man, I don't know what else to do. Oh, screw it. Let me go sign up for the military,
right.
first responder community. But where I am coming with this is a lot of us come into these careers without a lot of life experience. For the most part, our parents weren't overly educated or overly knowledgeable in finances, investing, and all that kind of stuff, which would have probably given you other opportunities besides these careers. And then you spend 20, 30 years in these careers, basically every day being told what to do, where to stand, what to wear, what to eat, what to do. And then you retire or leave these careers, and then you wonder why they aren't risk averse, because they've never been forced to make those kind of decisions through those careers.
I think there is, I'll use myself as an anecdote here. There is one more group, the people who do have the educations and still recommending their children. I'm at the doctoral level. I finished my PhD this year. I have an MBA as my master's and sociology for my bachelor's. I'm still having my daughter go to the Air Force. And knowing how she can leverage her benefits while in and then directly after, debt-free, master's, at 23 years old and a veteran with benefits.
But for the most part,
mm-hmm.
the average parent isn't going to know how to guide their child to utilize the military to the maximum benefit to them.
Mm-hmm. 100% the case. But you know whose fault that is also? Recruiters, because they don't know either. You're not going to have a conversation with a recruiter and tell them how to leverage. They might know what the yellow ribbon clause is. And I'll give you an example. You heard the yellow ribbon clause? It's basically a clause that negates the $28,800 and whatever dollars a month per year that they can spend, or per fiscal year they can spend on education, right? They know about this. I know they do. However, they don't know how to leverage that. I'll give you an example. I got my bachelor's and master's with an emphasis in 22 months with the 4.0H by leveraging the yellow ribbon clause. It's not negating so you can go to a better school or, get a better degree. I ended up doubling, tripling up my classes year round while working 50 hours, the family and kids and wife. 22 months.
So it's just a clause that guarantees you to get into the classes you need and or want, if I'm understanding correctly.
So you can only spend a certain amount of money per year with the GI Bill. Any university or college that has a DoD contract with the yellow ribbon clause built in can negate that, right? What that means is you can use and abuse it to how much you want to spend. And to me, money wasn't quality, it was quantity. I can get more classes in faster. The faster I can graduate, the faster I can make more money. I saved over 2 years of college just getting my
How'd you learn about that?
Well, I did my own research. Right? Military taught me discipline, motivation. The stuff I'd learned from the military, I actually read all my benefits. So I looked into it, and I look at things a little bit differently, a little more strategically, right? And yeah, I doubled and tripled up. My wife did, my buddy did. They're all doing fantastic right now. But you got to figure, if you can finish 2 years early, you get a job for 2 more years. That's for me, it was a $200,000, net gain. by graduating, 2 years early. So that's 200,000 plus the amount I've gotten during the yellow ribbon. So upwards of 3, maybe. Yeah, there's a lot of things out there, but, well, there's a lot more than that. I actually messed up because I didn't know everything until it was way too late. Like VRE, vocational rehabilitation for employment, was just for disabled veterans. You have to use it before your master's degree. Otherwise, they'll say that you're too educated and you can't use it. But that
sounds like a good basis for a company to help advise veterans.
That's what we made. That's exactly what we made.
And I definitely want to get there. One question I do want to ask you, though. So you knew going in, no way it's going to be a career. While you were in, nothing really significant happened, because you mentioned you started going down the pipeline for Ranger training and you're like, what am I doing? So let's take you to transition out. Did you have a plan for what you were going to do afterwards?
School. The only reason I use one word, because that was my plan. One word, school.
And what degree was in mind?
Sociology. I was going to get my MSW, and then I realized they wanted me to do 4,000 free hours of residency, and jobs were like $60,000. And nope, that's not for me. No thanks. Appreciate it. Not for me. Sorry.
Did you start down the path of sociology and then switch majors?
Yeah. So I got my bachelor's in sociology. I like people. I really wanted to do veteran counseling. That's what I wanted to do. I just did not want to make the money that was being offered for that kind of role. So I ended up switching to business. I'm like, oh, Lord have mercy. I was always fantastic in money.
So you've got the heart of a nonprofit with the brain and soul of Caviar Dreams.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Just putting it all in the old lifestyles of rich and famous.
Yes. So that was that binary, conversation. Show me what you want to be versus what kind of lifestyle you want to live. And that was that internal battle. I had to pick one or the other. I had a wife and kids, 4 kids, so I didn't have the luxury of doing what I wanted to do. I'm doing that kind of now, but not at the time, right? So I chose business. It was broad spectrum, I could apply anywhere across any industry, right? So I wasn't limiting myself. And I got an emphasis in project management. So that's where I ended up for my master's. Yep. I had to change right away. Could not do a master's in sociology. Just was not going to yield what I needed it to.
Did you do your entire time in the Army at one duty station?
Mm-hmm.
Where was that at?
Fort Riley, Kansas.
And from your family's perspective, when you were coming out, was ending up in California where you wanted to be, or how'd you guys end up in California?
So I'll give you an interesting statistic before I answer that. I'm going to have to guess here because I don't remember the exact numbers. But when people ask for raises in their own company, they get about 7% versus about 13.5%. I'll have to check those numbers, but it's damn close to that. When they transfer companies, right? People don't really value what they have internally. This is what's caused the market, the big market. It's something that's very new, right? You're not going to see people working at companies for 20 years in a row anymore. Those days are dead, right? Retention strategies have changed since then. So after the military, my wife joined. As I got out, we went to Fort Huachuca while she finished her term there. From there, I built Powerline over in New Mexico. Then New Mexico, I used my MBA when I graduated to do, I developed a program for an international engineering company up in Albuquerque. And from there, I did organizational consulting for a company in Utah. These are all $500 million to $20 billion companies. And then from there, I ended up moving to California. So it was a lot of moving. We're settled now, but you have to do what you need to in order to do what you want. And that was the process. Now our kids can basically be raised in a single area.
It sounds like, though, to give your wife credit, because there's not a lot of men and women who are able to find a partner who can match them in that ability to plan, move, execute. So it really sounds like you scored, so to speak, in finding your wife, as opposed to had you married somebody else who wanted to stay in a certain geographical location close to their family. And I'm not putting this in any way in a negative. It's just there are certain things that some people find more important. hey, I love the idea that you got, but I want to stay close to my mom and dad kind of deal.
Yeah. So what was it? 25 years ago, everyone would live within 30 minutes of their parents. That's changed, obviously. It's the reason I left Connecticut industry. Same, her family's in middle of Kansas. I would have to lose about 80% of my income to go back there. That said, she's trusted me. My wife is fantastic. I'm blessed to have her. 100%. Couldn't have done it without her. She held it down while I was unemployed for 9 months. Right. So yeah, it was calculated. It was methodical. It was a joint decision. But my wife also trusts me to make the best decisions for our family.
Did she want to get out of Kansas when you guys first got together?
Not really. But she hadn't really traveled the world. Like, I've been in every single corner of this country. I know what's out there. I know what's good. I know what's bad. Anywhere you go, there's good and bad, right? But having traveled so much, I know that middle of Kansas wasn't. I mean, if you've been around, right? I grew up on the ocean too. So, but she gave me the license and latitude to lead, like the man of the family. And she believed in me. And I couldn't let her down. And we ended up working it out.
Well, and that is ultimately, though, one of those difficult decisions, conversations, bridges that every veteran or first responder has to cross when they transition out. Because let's say your last duty station was San Diego. Mm-hmm. You're like, man, I love it here. I want to stay in San Diego. Well, then you better set yourself up to find a job to afford to live in San Diego.
You can't. Almost nobody can after the military. And
so it goes back to that. You've got to go into this with your eyes open, and you've got to do your 4 years, your 20 years, whatever it is, with your eyes open and a plan of attack. Because on the flip side, if you've gotten comfortable in the middle of Kansas in a duty station for the last 6 or 8 years of your career, and then you get pissed because, well, there's no work for me here. You have to go where the work is.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And people don't want to do that, believe it or not. And
I can imagine that.
I never thought I ended up in California, expensive as it is, but opportunity has...
There's not a lot of people here, though, so it's a nice trade-off. Yeah, it's real expensive, but it's sparsely populated.
Yeah, where we are, yeah. I can't complain. I'm in suburbia, so it's good, But the food and the people are good right where we're at, so I cannot complain. My kids go down the street, don't worry about them. The lights go on, come back. The old school thing. We still bring some of those back. But yeah, no, it's that transition that people don't really have. I mean, they have it, right, in the military, but imagine getting civilian advice from someone who's never been a civilian. That's crazy. That's crazy. Let's say you want to live in Utah. Super expensive there too. It's a bad example. Let's say you want to make $80,000 a year when you get out to live the lifestyle you want. Not a whole lot, but enough to get by. I don't think I've ever talked to an active service member that can name me 5 jobs that pay $80,000 a year outside the military that aren't in the exact same swim lane. Civil engineer, electrical engineer, They can't. They don't know what's out there. They don't. And the people that are teaching them, this is not judgmental, it's just they're only making like 60, 70 grand a year. They don't really know what's out there.
Well, unfortunately, most of the people who are in roles, I'll say, that are in those roles that tend to be assigned advisors, tend to be indoctrinated into the company way of thinking.
I would say indoctrinated and limited. And when I say limited, there's a reason for that, right? They have these 18-year-old young men and women in the military. And the finance department will tell you how to diversify your 401k portfolio with the thrift savings plan. Why do we have 18-year-old kids with extremely low risk, highly diversified portfolios? That's insane. Absolutely insane. Now, I'm not saying put them in risky stocks, but I don't know much about the stock market. I made like 30.5% last year, right? Like high risk, higher risk. And they're pulling, maybe 10, 11% per year. You should not have less than $1 million if you graduated, if you did 20 years right now. There's no reason for you not to have $1 million. Minimum.
That kind of goes back to, though, and that can also be considered a failure of our society, of our parents, whatever you want to talk about. You started the podcast talking about Dan Pena and hearing his voice. You take the average young man or young woman, they've never listened to a Dan Pena, a Mel Robbins, anybody who's tried to be a voice in their head of think bigger picture. But for the most part, I'll say 85% of the young men graduating high school today can quote you the stats of their favorite sports team. They know 20 years ago that they won the Super Bowl, or they won stuff that is completely irrelevant in their life, but they couldn't tell you about. And I'm not saying that I understand it. I'm saying I'm looking back at what I was like when I graduated high school. I didn't know a single thing about how to invest with strategy, how to invest aggressively as opposed to conservatively. I didn't know anything about it. And then when I started my career, I had people trying to tell me what we refer to as a deferred comp or 401k, max it. I didn't do it. I didn't listen to those people because that wasn't ingrained in me coming up as a young man. Your kids will probably be different.
I didn't either when I was in the military.
But what I'm saying is your kids will be different.
Oh, God, yeah. Oh, yeah. And it's so easy. Like, I dumped all my money out of the stock market in early February. Are you familiar with the stock market? What's going on right now?
I know it's Well, yeah, it's adjusting.
Yeah, it's tanking.
Depending on whose version is, it's tanking or it's adjusting. It's not in.
There's a huge opportunity right now to make money, and if people who are paying attention took their money out at the right time and reinvested it, I mean, Apple's down like 20-something%. Tesla, Amazon, companies aren't going anywhere, right? So we know it's a short-term dip. When that bottoms, no one wants to know, but still, my point is there's a lot of opportunity here to make some decent money real quick. And it's just things like that. But that's why you only max, your 401k with your match. If you're matched at 4.5%, you just put 4.5% in. If you want to invest more, go do it with another company.
Right.
Outside of your 401k. That way you have more options, right? You're not gonna be able to put in Tesla per se if you wanted to do your 401k. But yeah, exactly that. And no one has these conversations. It's interesting, actually. I'm gonna go down the rabbit hole here. I was at a counseling meeting with my daughter's counselor in high school. This was her sophomore year at the time. Business statistics or business management course. Hey, you should take that one. Counselor goes, oh, that one's really tough. You might not want to do that one. I said, excuse me? Granted, it wasn't going to, flex by any means. I says, no, it's extremely important. There's no other class in her entire high school career. It's going to mean more than that class. It's that much of a gap, disparity in value. But that's the mentality. Teachers don't even know. Who are you going to learn from if not your family, not your friends, not your teachers?
It takes a huge amount of self-realization and understanding that nothing's coming to you unless you're going to go figure it out and go get it on your own. And there's so much, I think there's so much money and wealth out there that a young person can get if they just put a little bit of effort into it. The wealthy people aren't volunteering to give it up, but at the same token, if you listen to what they say and implement some basic strategies, you can make a lot of money in your life.
The one thing I will say about successful people is they are egoists. They would love to tell you how they did it. Most people aren't going to be able to follow their footsteps because they don't have that drive. But they will tell you how. You just have to listen and then do it. It's really that simple.
Let's transition to your company now. How did it grow legs? How was it born? What's it about?
So our company, my colleagues and I've done a lot of consulting with them over the years. We're very dynamic. One of my buddies was a veteran, my best friend. And I've helped him and some other colleagues of mine from the military. We were going to do consulting, organizational development, process improvement, business process reformation, a bunch of boring stuff that probably no one cares about. But I kept helping a lot of veterans go through this. And every single person I've helped is making 100 to 200 plus a year.
Now, were you doing this informally or?
Yes, exactly. And that's where the inspiration came from. And I was like, well, this is prescriptive. It's not prescriptive in the sense that there's only one path to go. It's like a dovetail. You can choose multiple paths to infinity, right? It's just the successive steps are the questions that you have to answer. How much do I want to make? Do I want to remote? Do I want to travel? Do I want to do this? What state do I want to live in? There's a lot of questions, right? Do I need an education? Am I disabled? There's a bunch of gates you have to go through in order to have your own tailored, but it is prescriptive in nature. But yeah, so they follow this path, and before they know it, in 2 years, they're all making fantastic money. I'm not saying money is everything.
Sponsorship for this podcast comes from Brothers in Arms USA. They're a veteran-owned and operated clothing and accessories brand that's 100% American-made. Every piece tells a story of brotherhood, respect, discipline, and honor, deeply inspired by those who serve, those who have served, and those who have paid the ultimate price serving our great country. Whether you're an outdoor enthusiast, a proud patriot, or simply somebody who values high-quality American craftsmanship, they've got something for you. Go check out brothersinarms.com, spelled out fully, brothersandarms.com, and use the promo code TRANSITION20 to get 20% off your purchase.
But it does give you the means and ability to do the things that you want, to raise children, to support a wife, to move, to buy a house. It's that important. It's, if you look at Maslow's hierarchy of needs, right? The very bottom two is, one is just physiological, food, shelter, right? And then the one is safety, work, stuff like that. Those two bottom levels of Maslow's hierarchy is what our program covers. And we kind of figured it out in a sense. What's the issue? What's the gap, right? There's a certain program right now, I'm sure you're aware of, which I won't mention, that teaches kids how to sit up straight in a chair and write a resume. Well, guess what? We got AI. We don't need that anymore. Okay. I'm not saying that you shouldn't learn, but at the same time, you're replaced. But how do they know where to aim? They don't even know how much they're making right now in the military, right? Which is that vantage point we talked about earlier. You can't aim somewhere. You can't do a resection on the map, land nav, right? You got to know where you're at, right? Same thing in life. You have to know where you're at to know where you're going. That's the first thing. Second thing is, the place you do want to go, what does that look like? What's the steps to get there? What's the industry preferred certifications, knowledge, experience? What is the compensation? Where do these jobs exist? And no one tells anyone these things. You know, they have to be kind of led by the collar, which isn't a bad thing. It just means that they don't know. Ignorance is the, blessing that one isn't evil, wicked, insane, or stupid. But yeah, and then so there's three converging circles that our company came up with, which is industry, which is where everyone goes from service right to industry, right into a job. Then education, and then entrepreneurship. Now, I guarantee they don't talk about entrepreneurship in the military. You might hear about it somewhere, some vague program that probably gets out to a few hundred people, but they don't really discuss it, right? Same thing with industry. They'll talk to you about a few programs that are out there that love hiring veterans.
To kind of cut you off before you go further, you mentioned something about discipline before, and you guide veterans coming out, but how many of them do you find have that natural discipline to do what it takes to get to where they want to go?
So I've only put my efforts towards the ones I know will. I can't save everyone, but if there's someone that's really wanting to be the best they can be, there's the throwback for us. I'm going to absolutely spend time with them and help them and have as many conversations as they need to get to where they want to. My best friend actually went through the same thing. And I was like, hey, it's not going to be easy, but I can tell you this. I tripled my courses. I did it. I had a family. I worked 50 hours, right? I did all the stuff, right? It's a small term sacrifice. That way you guys can do what you want when you get older. You can retire early. You don't have to work till the day you die. You can retire at 50, 55. He's young enough to do that. I'm not. But yeah, you kind of know the character of the people you're working with. But regardless of the character, you know, more holistically speaking, people, even if you don't think that they're going to succeed, even if you don't think that they have the character, the values, the wherewithal or tenacity, what do you want to call it, grit, they still should have the opportunity to be exposed to the knowledge. You know, maybe they'll change in a few years and want that. And right now they don't really have that, right? I can show, even if you want to go straight to industry, education doesn't have to be at all. Like straight to industry is one of the converging circles, right? You can use your GI Bill to supplement being an apprentice plumber, electrician, carpenter, whatever the case may be, lineman. You're making 6 figures in your first year. Base, overtime, GI Bill. And I'll also tell them that, hey, may your back will go out. Mine's done. I can't do physical labor anymore. I'd be homeless right now without my education. 100%.
Is your back related to being in the Army?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Just had my last MRI last week, looking at a second surgery. But
was it a specific incident that happened or just a totality?
It was just during gunnery. I threw it out and couldn't walk. And ibuprofen, drink water, change socks. Not exaggerating at all. But yeah, but getting seen is part of the program as well, where you talk, you know, taking care of yourself. Because transition does not start when you decide not to re-up. It starts on the day you hit basic training, day one.
You're stealing my line. You're stealing
that your
my
line?
thunder. No, well, no. I've just, when I try to talk about the not only the importance of planning and preparing for your transition, but I talk about the fact that it's starting today, wherever you're at in your career, because, as you mentioned with your back, the one thing that these careers also guarantee us is you can have the best plan in the world. Hey, I'm going to do 20, I'm going to do 30, whatever it is. And literally tomorrow, you are transitioning, because it may not be a debilitating injury to where you can't live your life, but it's enough of an injury to where the government or your city or your county goes, hey, you just can't play on our team anymore. And now what do you do? So yes, I jokingly say that the day you sign on the dotted line and you're standing in formation the first time, you should be thinking about, what am I going to do when this job is done?
Well, in that sense also, people that don't use VA are absolutely crazy. People that use GI Bill and associate's degree are absolutely crazy. That is the worst waste of an associate's degree, or GI Bill on associates. Pay cash, it's cheap, right? If you can't save up for it, don't use your GI Bill. But that said, yeah, you need to get I know it's tougher in combat roles, MOSs. That's something that needs to be addressed on its own. But there's no reason you shouldn't have a bachelor's when you get out, or darn close to it. 3.5 years, no reason. Even if you're deployed as a non-combat MOS, there's no reason that you can't, get that done or close to it.
Well, there's a little bit of it too. We talked about, or I brought up the point of discipline, but there's a little bit of personal sacrifice. You got to give up a little bit of the fun and everything else now for the benefits in the long term. I go back to, when I first started in law enforcement, and the old guys would be like, man, don't go out and buy the truck, big lifted truck. Go buy a house. Go buy something that's going to have benefit to you. But every one of us has to go through that learning phase of realizing I'm pissing money away right now, or I'm pissing away my time. You know what? I've got some downtime. I'll sit here and play video games for an hour and a half. You could have done an online class in that hour and a half. It's all about perspective. It's all about where you put your priorities.
You know what? It's also, show me your friends and I'll show you your future. Even in my doctoral dissertation, when it comes to research and literature for the background, there's programs out there. There's nothing worse than reading an article And you're like, oh, this is probably gonna be a good one. I can probably use this in my writing. Like, oh no, that wasn't it. You just wasted 45 minutes reading a 15-page dense research article. There is AI out there right now, like Illicit, I'll name it, that you can type in a very well-crafted AI prompt that will give you, whether it's your focus, your moderating variables, your independent, dependent, or whatever the case may be, and what your focus is on, and the results being quantitative or hierarchical regression, whatever the case may be. You can put all that in and it will find you all the articles. It takes about 10 minutes to scour and contextualize and read these articles. I've saved hundreds and hundreds of hours in data collection, in research collection rather, just using that. In 5 years, degrees won't be worth anything because AI can do it all. Thank God I'm getting mine now. My point is, though, is that you're not exposed to that. You're not going to know how to optimize your time, your effort, right? There's a lot of ways of doing it out there. There's no reason that you shouldn't have a bachelor's degree when you finish.
Do you think, and this is just completely side note, because I like talking about the concepts of AI, and I believe that everybody today should be doing anything and everything they can to interact with AI. And if there is a way that AI can improve or streamline what you do, you should be adopting AI. And if AI can replace your job, then you better be looking at, okay, what am I going to do instead? Or how, I'll use the example. I talked to somebody who was in advertising and they use the analogy of, I could spend 4 hours and create I'm just using these numbers because I don't remember exactly what they said, but basically I could spend 4 hours and create 2 marketing projects for 2 clients. Or I could use AI and let AI in an hour create 10 for 10 different clients, but I'm just going to charge those 10 clients a little bit less because I'm going to work on quantity. So yeah, I could sit here and hold my heels in the ground like, I want this to be my work, but I'm only going to be able to service 2 clients. So I'm going to need to charge them more. Or I can use AI. And where I was going with this is, if it's something that AI can do, you need to be using it to your advantage. I almost think from the school perspective, I'm interested to see where the future is going to be. If it's not going to be written projects going forward, if it's going to be all oral, you're going to have to argue your dissertation.
Oh, I have to argue regardless.
But that's only at the doctoral level.
Yes.
You may see that down at the master's level too.
Very rarely. But yeah, I actually just said this a week ago. There's going to be checkpoints throughout a program, whether it's a master's or bachelor's or whatever the case. And you have to sit there and defend through theory or do the work in person or whatever the case may be. Stand up and let the professor shoot shots at your thesis, your paper. They're going to have to put some kind of safeguards in place. Absolutely. Even with right now, like coders, it's only a matter of time for engineers, digital creators. It's already on its way. It's already on its way. Now, I will say, though, that even at the doctoral level, when I run some regressions or whatever the case may be, it gets them wrong here and there. And you'd have to be at a certain level where you can see that. Let's put it that way. You're not, anything you do in high school is going to be 100% correct. Everything you do in your associates and bachelor's is 100% correct. Master's, 95% correct, 98% correct. But after that, it gets a lot more complex.
I would say that the amount that I'm interacting with AI, it's actually surprising how often it makes mistakes or it references the information incorrectly. And it's only because I know the information to be able to identify it. If you're, like you said, you put in a prompt on a topic that you really don't understand and it spits it out, you don't have the knowledge base to be able to go back and review it and go, oh, that's not accurate. And so that's where a lot of times people get caught up.
And it's weird because I'm in the rabbit hole again here, but it's actually not wrong per se. It's that we didn't give it enough context, right? Enough parameters, which is the AI prompting, which is an art in and of itself. You actually have to ask AI for the best, most optimized, thorough, contextualized, holistic prompt it can come up with. That's going to give you da-da-da-da-da with the contextual limiters of da-da-da-da. You have to tell AI to come up with the best prompt to do
Correct.
that. Yep.
Correct.
And even then, you're probably going to, I should have told it this as well. And it's usually what we don't put in that makes it come across as wrong, right?
True that. Yeah. And obviously, the more you interact with it in a weird way, the more it learns you, the more it learns you and the topic you're researching.
It's funny because I do that and got kind of weird a few times. It was like, man, you're killing it. This. And I was like, who are you talking to like that? But yeah, no, I started getting a little too personal. I was like, oh boy, I don't like where this is going. I've seen this movie. But yeah, it's definitely, unfortunately, going to be ingrained in our future, just as much electricity is.
So going back to your company,
Mm-hmm.
in the sense of working with your company,
Mm-hmm.
we've kind of rhetorically, but seriously said, your transition preparation starts the first day you're in these careers. But in working with a veteran, how do they come to you and how do they start working with you?
They don't come to me. I actually came to them. They don't know that I have all that knowledge, that experience, and trials and tribulations as I've been through to learn what I have. And I always start like, what are you trying to accomplish? Where are you now, and where do you want to be? And that isn't in the sense of what kind of job do you want to be when you grow up. They come to a coming to God moment, so to speak. Like, oh well, this isn't as easy as I thought it would be, being a civilian adult. Right? We're no longer structured. We don't have any kind of book to find an answer in or have someone give us the answer from a higher position. We have to go find those. We can find them in other people, but you got to know where to look. Right? So yeah, I reach out when I see someone that's on school, and I had only one turn it away. But he wasn't the most upstanding soldier. But still, seeing he was trying, so I figured I'd help. Just wanted to lollygag and just barely get his bachelor's, and that's fine, nothing wrong with that. But you'll never exceed the apex of your own self-imposed limitations, right? And if you can see those in someone else, you know who you can help and who you can't.
Do you impose personal limitations on your consulting and your advising in the sense of, because I'm sure you get, man, I don't know what I want to do after I get out. Where I'm coming with is like almost looking to you to kind of tell me what I should go do. So
there's like career construction theory, and a lot of people love to use the MTBI, Big Five personality inventory, but there's issues with test retest. Like you can take the test this week and then go take it in 2 weeks and be totally different. That's test retest, and there's no validity there. So as far as like choosing a career, I've heard a lot of veterans talk about purpose. People love having purpose in their job, but the purpose in their job might be to earn money. Purpose in their job might be to build something that I can see and touch. Purpose is too vague in and of itself to measure in any kind of research. You'd have to put some very strict limitations on the definition. That said, you have to have a goal, and it's usually financial, right? No one has the goal of purely just making enough to live in a van, right? We're not Scooby. We're not Shaggy, right? We need, phones. We need clothes. We need shelter. We need food, right? Electricity, internet. That all takes capital, right? Got to pay our taxes like 8 times on the same dollar. But yeah, so the question really comes down to, what lifestyle do you want to live? And there's no more important question than that.
Can that translate to purpose? Because when I think
that's that purpose word again, though. It's like, what is your purpose?
Well, what I'm getting at is, if somebody wakes, whether you want to call it purpose, whether you want to call it motivation, whether you want to call it dedication, it's that when you wake up in the morning, you want to go do what needs to be done. How do I want to temper? I understand. Nobody wakes up every morning and goes, man, I want to go bust my ass all day. They have to have an end goal, an end state in mind. It has to become a purpose, a motivator, a driver to get them to go do it every day, is what I'm getting at. So isn't that still a purpose?
So the purpose of the military, right? We already broke down the individuality. Now we're part of this total institution theory, if you will. And our purpose is to serve, duty first, right? But as a civilian, that's no longer the case. Where we employ ourselves is no longer our purpose in the same fact, in the same way that it was while we're in the military.
I'm talking about your personal purpose. Like your purpose for you're out of, you've transitioned out, you're waking up to this morning and I'm going to go do X, Y, or Z. I have to have what's going to motivate me. Is that not a purpose?
Yes, your motivation might be your family, right? It might be like one of my immediate focuses is we're going to Japan in September. Guess what I need to do that? I need to work, right? So my means gets me to my purpose, right? My means isn't my purpose. And in the military, I'm going back to that for a reason. There's a medley there. There's a cacophony. And it's like this. There's a glycerin that holds that together. And as we have this psychosocial rupture after we exit the military, that glycerin comes apart because one of the variables is gone, which is that structure, the hierarchical structure that we depend on, that we love. We just need it. And now it's just you. So part of your purpose, part of your means is gone, right? And now you have to restructure that and refine that new purpose. It's just a reallocation of energy and intent and perspective, really. It might be just your family now. And there's nothing wrong with that. That's my purpose. I have 4 beautiful children and a wife. And it makes me happy when they're happy. Much like during Christmas, you're a kid. You didn't care what dad got when he got his socks and his tie, right? You didn't give junk. But now that you're an adult, you get 10 times more joy watching your children open those presents than you would ever opening one for yourself, right? That's a transformation of purpose, right? Same thing happens when you transition from the military into civilian. It's too different. You're autonomous now. You don't have anything prescriptive. Go figure it out. And there is obviously a gap in there that is not taken care of from a educational or a counseling standpoint. But yeah, your purpose is not something anyone else can find for you. There is narrative theory, which you can explore it with peers, like, hey, what are you going to do? Well, what do you want to do? Or what's your focus on? Who do you live with? What's your friend circle? Networking, all that stuff that needs to take place in order for you to transform your identity. And then purpose will there follow after. But you're still stuck in the old ways.
Bringing in the touchy-feely side of it, can somebody have joy and happiness and still be, I'm going to throw out the purpose word, but I need to provide for my family. I'm going to go do whatever it is I've chosen to do. Will there still be joy and happiness in there? Or is it kind of the theory of the bodybuilder? I just need to get in 200 grams of protein a day. I don't care how it happens. It's not going to taste good. I'm not going to enjoy the meal. I need to hit my 200 grams of protein a day.
A lot of people can't think longitudinally. So when you talk about people with the protein, I go to the gym every day. I try to stay healthy, even with my limitations of my disability. But at the same time, it's just a small part of who I am. It used to be the biggest part for the military. I was just jacked, ripped, ready for shows. And then I realized it doesn't mean anything. At least not to who I am now. Because people change. At 40, you're not the same as at 30, and 30 is not at 20. People change. And that takes wisdom. So just now that I'm 41 now, I'm not going to be the same at 51. So I have to keep that in mind, not be, I guess, obsessed with any given part of who I am. Otherwise, that'll become who I am. If I not identify, but like being a father is my main 90% of what happens when my nest is empty. I'm going to go through that same rupture, right? You have to be dynamic. You have to be cognizant of, things are malleable, plastic, they change. And I think purpose can change too. Once my kids are older and I have more money in the bank, I'm probably never going to do anything I don't want to do again. At the age of 55, I'm going to work what I want to work, who I want to work, where I want to work, how much I want to work. I'm going to enjoy the job I take, the consulting I want to do. Maybe it's just on process. Maybe it's on hierarchical development. Whatever I want to do. That's my goal, because I'm going to change and no longer have to work in whatever I'm doing now per se. Yeah, it's malleable. It changes.
Do you always see yourself in a vein of working with other veterans and providing assistance and guidance? Is that always going to kind of be the anchor? I'll call it the profession for you.
It's one of two things I'm passionate about as far as work goes. Basically because, veterans, everything we talked about from that social deconstruction and all the training between the yelling, the success, the failures, the pain, the trauma, the fear, the drill sergeants are the enemy, and then they're their buddy at the end. We all know what that is. Yeah, you graduate into something, but all that's done. And you know what the crazy thing about that is, before I go down this path? It's all organic. There was no psychoanalytical mastermind behind all this. It's all organic. There's no one that says, okay, in order to get everyone to think like a hive mind, let's shave all their heads. No, it was just organic. Same thing as training for hundreds and hundreds of years. Military cadence. The guy, he over the years, there was I can't remember the Prussian name of the guy who started this, but yeah, it was just totally organic over the years with the military. It had nothing to do with theory or psychology. It just came up organically. But all that trauma that they go through in their minds and their bodies and that PTSD, right? And they're just totally changed. And nobody even looks at it like that. And they have, when I see a lot of, and it bothers me, is people trying to help veterans. They don't understand what they're talking about at the highest level. I'm well enough versed on it to speak to it a little bit, but I am by no means a psychotherapist. I'm not on the clinical side at all. But that said, they talk about finding purpose in the job. That's literally the top of the Maslowian pyramid. It's the last thing you have to worry about. But that's where they're starting. That's what they're focused on. I had a veteran tell me that he didn't find purpose and ended up making a bad decision, and one that's irreversible. And it was interesting to me because I knew that wasn't really the problem. It couldn't be, right? There had to be something else. Even in the middle of the pyramid, there is the social and psychosocial well-being, belonging, being loved, right? There is the bottom two. And then there's the second one to the top, which we haven't discussed, which is self-realization. And then top would be self-actualization. But going through all those, there's no way that anyone's looking at their psyche, their way that they're built, their identity. It's all just figure it out. After all the damage we do to them up until the point of transition, the only thing we give them is here's some GI Bill. Here's some benefits because you're broken. It doesn't fix any actual issues in the head. And that's one huge thing that's missing too. Where our program works on the bottom two, which is the most important really, right? How can you have self-realization, self-actualization if you don't even have food and a shelter and a career and stability? You had that in the military. All right, well now let's work on the other parts. Yeah.
If I use the analogy of that just about to retire cop, firefighter, those are the ones that I'm more familiar with. They're at that 26, 27 year mark. They are burned out. Mm. All they're doing is looking at that date on that calendar for when they can put their retirement papers in. Mm-hmm. But they understand that when they get to that date, it's not golf and margaritas. It's going to be another job. And I don't mean to keep coming back to this, but if they're already at that point of burnout and then they go take a cop, for instance, they retire and then they go get a PI license or they go do some sort of security related work, they're likely still going to be burned out. But are you saying that it's it's not burnout from the job. They need to be looking at other pieces of their life that's causing what they're manifesting as burnout.
Could be, might also not be. I mean, each case is obviously going to be a lot different than others. Some people are burned out from the hours. Some people are burned out from acute events. Some people are burned out just from working all the years and that they're old. You know, it's too hard to overly generalize something like that, I believe. I mean, I've had long hours. I've traveled. People get burnout travel, right? Cognitive load burnout, same thing. Right now I work my job. I have my company. I have a wife and 4 kids, and I'm finishing my doctoral dissertation on change in organizational development. I get 4 hours of sleep a night. Maybe when I'm done with this, I'll be burnt out. But then again, maybe what do I do with all this time? I can't really say yet. I haven't been through it. So I think it's really hard to answer that question. Each person is entirely different. But as kind of soft as it sounds, therapy can always help with something like that. There's a lot of stuff packed in over the years, right? Same thing with veterans. There's a lot of stuff packed in over the years, having to Roger, and never being able to have any kind of cathartic event where you're able to release your anger, release your stress.
Your body is built for more energy, more focus, more strength. But if you're feeling sluggish, unmotivated, or mentally drained, it's time to make a change. At Human Performance TRT, science meets convenience. Their hormone replacement therapy, weight loss programs, and mental health solutions are all designed to help you feel and perform at your best without ever leaving home. They offer medical-grade hormone optimization, weight loss support with personalized health coaching, and ketamine therapy for depression, anxiety, and trauma, all guided by qualified mental health professionals. HPTRT is veteran and first responder owned, and they make it simple to optimize your health. There's no locked-in contracts, and if you're already on a hormone program, switching is easy. There's no extra test if your blood work is under 6 months old. Ready to take back your edge? Go to hptrt.com and use the promo code TDP for 30% off. That's hptrt.com and use the promo code TDP for 30% off your entire program. Stop waiting. Your peak performance starts now.
For some people, that's the gym. For some people, the DV statistics in your and as well as mine.
Mm-hmm.
There's a reason for that, right? It's because of that pressure, that stress, and not having an appropriate outlet, that cathartic kind of event.
So if I was coming to work with you for guidance, assistance in my transition and what I'm going to do afterwards, what's the first question you're going to ask me?
When do you want to retire?
January 1st, 2026.
Well, that's less than a year away, so there's not much we can do.
January 1st, 2030.
Well, okay. So then you'd have to see where you're at financially as well. So where are you at versus where you want to be? I think those are the 2 most important things. What you did, obviously someone in the military or being an officer is going to have a much different experience than someone who sat at the desk in the police versus someone who sat at the desk in the military. So you're going to explore some career options, right? At that point, it depends. If you're already well off, you hopefully have something in the 7 figures after working 20 years, if you have the proper guidance. That said, you have the luxury of just doing whatever you want to fill the time until you're ready to I think it's also important, not to jump too far ahead here, but defining what retirement looks like. It's different for everyone. For me, it's doing what I want when I want. It's not working, right? It's just working if I want, when I want, or traveling if I want, when I want, right? So retirement looks different for everyone. And also, I'm probably not going to live as long as most. 65, maybe 70, all the health issues, right? I don't want to work until 60. I don't. I want to have 10 years to enjoy some retirement. So I'm going to bust my butt right now. So that's a very multivariate equation, right? You can't sit there and just put everyone in a box. Everyone's story is different. And that's where narrative theory is absolutely wonderful, because you can explore that in storytelling through, like what we're doing now. This is exactly what that is. That's how I'd approach it. It's very reactive to someone's story versus kind of saying, okay, go do this, and this. A lot of things in conversation have to happen before that. Then you have to know what's available, what resources, agencies, groups, benefits you have at your disposal. And then how can you most strategically leverage those to reach your goal?
My question was a little loaded, and I'm trying to trigger something with anybody listening right now. And I hope, and if I'm going down the right path, please, is that I threw out the first date of less than a year. Mm-hmm. There's hardly anybody who's going to be able to give you any type of tangible advice that's going to be beneficial to you in that period.
That's right.
Even giving you 4 years, it's not a lot of room to work with. It goes back to that thing of you need to be planning from day one, and you need to have a long-term vision, long-term goals, but also equal to that is waypoints where you're reevaluating those goals and where you want to get to.
100%. I mean, there are still options. You know, you got to look at someone's portfolio, their assets. I mean, if you want to retire in 4 years and you have a 5-bedroom house and you're by yourself, it's time to liquidate, right? There's other ways you can find retirement.
You can knock down a bunch of walls and make it a 1-bedroom house. Really
Rent
big
them out,
one.
yeah.
Really big 1-bedroom house.
Like a cathedral. But no, that was like a tough question to answer. I was like, 10 months? I'm like, that ship may have sailed already. So my father worked till the day he died. And that was something I will not do. I will not do it. You know, I want to help my kids buy a home. I want to do all these things. I'm only 41. I can still do that. But
now, you mentioned to this point, or largely, you've gone and sought out the veterans that you're going to work with.
Mm-hmm.
I'm assuming your company model is making your company more available to a wider spectrum of veterans. How are they finding you? And are you only working in person, or is there the remote capability? Because obviously you're here in Southern California and there's men and women deployed and assigned around the world.
So it's to be remote, but at least on the one-on-one help. I have a few lieutenant colonel, sergeant majors, and some people in different branches of the military right now that are interested in piloting a program that is, well, there's 3 elements to the program outside of, it's a 3x3 model. The 3 vectors, which are education, entrepreneurship, and straight to industry. The 3x3 model comes with awareness, preparedness, and education, right? Because that's all we can do. We can't save the world. We can't get every single person to be successful. They had to take some personal accountability and apply what we're going to give them. And that's just access to how to leverage benefits, what's out there, what kind of industries they might want. And, we still discuss the softer stuff like, time at home, a family, travel, stuff like that. It's not purely quantitative in nature. But what would it look like is, and the most important part is getting early access. I think probably those last couple of weeks of basic, when everyone's kind of unloading the stress, but not fully adopting into their first duty station. I think that's the best time to introduce all this after the chaos is over of basic training, and they can understand that doesn't matter if you're getting out in 3 years or in 30. You have to make this move now. It's not something up for debate. You have to make these moves now. All right. You say, well, I'm a private. I can't. Like, you're going to be broke anyway. Just put $100 a week in it. You know what I mean? Hey, there's nothing you need to buy as an 18-year-old private. Literally nothing. Shaving stuff, a couple things at the PX. You can, my daughter's gonna be dumping half of her net into her 401k, or matched then in the private. But yeah, so getting in early, right?
Is that kind of a long-term vision or goal of your company, is to get access at that basic training level to where you could do a presentation as they're coming to the end of basic training?
Yes. And they have versions. They have to go to do their financial initial, but it's not optimized. Let's put it that way. But also when you're looking at this, it can't be something, there's silos of transitioning, how to make resumes, how to do your 401k, but they never are mutually exclusive. They're all overlapping, right? They're all converging circles. And that's what our program does. And it gets you in the mindset of thinking like an adult, right? And you need to prepare for these. You don't want to waste your GI Bill on your associate's degree. You should have that before you get out. And then so there's monitoring, and mentoring and I guess engaging throughout their service. Doesn't matter if it's 3 years or 30 years, you're doing it throughout, right? Checkpoints. We'll just say once a year, you're gonna meet with a career counselor. Hey, how's your education going? Hey, certifications? Started any? Stuff like that. And then about a year out from terminal separation would be a final alignment. Okay, what have we accomplished? Where are we going? And what do we need left to get there? It's a bit of hand-holding, but I think that's needed because that is the culture in the military, right? Then when you loose them out to the wild, so to speak, they should be able to have at least faculties and at least the accreditation, to say the least, to do what they want. Direction, understanding, risk, and leverage. Stuff like that.
Are you a proponent of virtually a yes or, unfortunately, putting in a yes or no box? Every young man and woman in the military should be getting some college education?
Do you mean should be or forcing to be?
Never the point of the government forcing them. Okay. You're advising if you were saying, if somebody was to come to you and go, hey, every young man or woman who goes into the military, even if they're just going to do that, 3.5, 4 years, go to college.
Well, I'll answer that question with a question. I know I hate doing that, but give me one situation where you think you don't need a degree. One situation.
Off the top of my head, I'm thinking like a plumber, some sort of technical trade that is not degree based.
You know what most people do in the trade industry once they know what they're doing? They open their own business. What kind of a degree would help you with that?
Oh, business degree.
Okay, there you go. Any others you can mention? My point is that you can keep going with this.
I was literally at the basics, because I know that there are more and more people today that are looking at saying maybe college isn't necessary for every single young man and woman.
You give anyone that started a business in the last 2 years, ask them what a cash flow, income sheet, and balance sheet is. Those are the trinity of business. You ask them what they are and how to use them, they'll have no idea unless they've been to a business school or they've been taught by someone who knows. These aren't just, basic things, right? You need to understand, your cash ratio, your liquidity. You need to understand, cash flow is most important, right? If you can't pay your people and you can't pay your bills and your subs or your material that you have to buy, you're going to be in trouble, right? It also affects the way you structure your contracts. And the milestone payments and all that stuff. So there's a lot that goes into that. It's not just as simple as I know how to do it, therefore I can do it. You might only be pulling 10% on a job where you should be pulling 23, 24. That's called opportunity cost, because you don't take the opportunity because you don't know what's there, or you don't find the risk worth taking.
Would your default answer then be to, if you don't really know what you want to do, get a business degree?
I love business degrees. They go anywhere with you. But first off, yes, I would say yes to education across everyone. There's no reason not to get an education. It's especially with AI helping you study. I'm not giving the answers, but helping you study. But business is a very safe thing to get into. No matter what you do, you can use it. All the principles, even in project management, actually. A lot of the principles in project management, stakeholder engagement, communication, risk analysis, scheduling, all these things overlap everything in life. So it's definitely project management and business. Those two things you can do anything, anywhere with.
Any pieces of your business that we haven't hit on that you wanted to make sure you brought out?
For the military part, no. It's really the 3x3 model, the vectors, and then the preparedness, education, and awareness. That's really intrinsic to being successful in transitioning. I mean, right now it's all done on the 11th hour, and that's just honestly unacceptable. My buddy asked me a couple weeks ago, he says, what do you remember from the program there? Absolutely nothing. Could not remember a dang thing. I could remember every step of my spur ride. Could not remember a thing from transition. It's how unmemorable it was. And it's also treated in the culture like a checkbox. But then again, people who haven't transitioned, how else would they treat it? They don't understand the value, right? Networking. I had a buddy who was in the military, and I'll give you an example. In our final residency class, he needed data acquisition from veterans, but he wanted to go to LinkedIn. I looked at the doctor and I said, oh, that's not going to work. And he already knew the same thing. Every veteran that's on LinkedIn pretty much already has a degree. So it's a poisoned pool, right? You need a diverse sample size. So your exclusion criteria would be looking on LinkedIn, because that's going to have a very skewed result to people already having a career, already having a degree, right? And that's not the vast majority. It's quite the minority. But yeah, my point is LinkedIn is fantastic for networking. Just one platform of many, but still it's probably like the gold standard, so to speak. And that's not even really brought up, or how to network, or when to network. You can't network in the last 3 months of your service contract. You need thousands of connections, right? First, second, third level, etc. You need all those connections, and it has to be something that's done over the years. It's not something done the last 11 months, or I'm sorry, last 3 months.
Any marketing piece that you really want people to know about your business, giving you the opportunity to, if somebody's considering wanting to work with you, what do you really want them to know?
I find the values are the most important. And, we are trying to make an impact in a very significant way across all branches, really, is the ultimate goal. And applying principles and theory, experience, efficiency, and a holistic set of knowledge in a working model. And I guess to emphasize that, I'll give you an example. There's a lot of companies out there that help transitioning active service members, but they don't really. They help transitioned veterans. They're not active duty. They already did their transition. You're putting a Band-Aid on a cut femoral artery. It's too late. You missed that boat. This is why it has to happen at the beginning, right? Not only that, though, is that their success is by how many people of them get jobs. How many of them get jobs? But if you look at their portfolio of companies that they're helping people get, there's a big one out there. I'll just name one because there's more than one. 150% turnover. 150% turnover. Every 100 people they hire, they lose and hire 100 more, and then they lose 50 more and they hire 50 more every single year. Why would you put a veteran who's looking for stability in a home in that position in a company like that? And those are the places that I know are either just not cognizant of what they're doing or wholly disingenuous. What we do at our company is we do it with purpose and conviction. We make sure what we're doing has a lasting effect, a new purpose, a new set of structures and longevity. It's genuine.
Again, from the marketing aspect, you want to throw out the company name so people know where to find.
Impact North Consulting.
I was surprised that you haven't said the name before, but I'll make sure I put the link in the show notes. I do appreciate your time. I wish you all the best with getting this company growing and making it everything you want it to be.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
As always, thank you for listening or watching the episode. If you have any comments or questions, feel free to reach out on social media or send me an email. The links are all in the show notes. I'd love to hear from you. Also, if you're not already, please follow the podcast on whatever platform you get your podcasts. You can also subscribe on YouTube. And if you would, please leave me a rating. Ratings do two things. You can tell me what I need to fix or improve, and the more ratings also gets the podcast recommended to more people. Another ask, please share the podcast with anyone you think could benefit from and enjoy it. And last, don't forget, sign up for the newsletter.